Persia was a mighty kingdom based on justice, fairness, and openness centered in what is now Iran. It is the first example of a fair, multi-ethnic, internally peaceful, and prosperous empire. The Persians rose to power in about 550 BCE. For about 200 years, the Persians ruled the largest empire in human history up to that point. The empire stretched from the Indus River in southern Asia to parts of southern Europe and northern Africa. At its height, the Persian Empire governed 50% of the world's population. The first empire ended with Alexander the Great's conquest. After the fall of the empire, a number of peoples ruled Persia, including the Parthians and Seleucids. The present-day country of Iran had its beginnings in the early 1500s, but the outside world called it Persia until 1935. In about 550 BCE, Cyrus II became king of Persia. He was the great-great-grandson of the first Persian king, Achaemenes, whose name is why historians call this the Achaemenid Persian Empire. The ruler of a kingdom to the south of a much more powerful kingdom of the Medians. Cyrus decided to conquer the Medians. He didn't have a big army, so he tried a different tactic. He looked for allies amongst the Median nobility, who were disgruntled by the way the Median Empire was ruled. He promised the Median nobles that he would give them the same rights as the Persians. He also made a point of forgiving his defeated enemies and also gave them equal rights. Over the next 40 years, the Persians brought one region after another under their control. Persian kings treated the groups they conquered with fairness and respect. They allowed the conquered kingdoms to keep their kings as long as they paid tribute and pledged allegiance to the Persian king. They allowed conquered peoples to follow their local customs and stay on their own land. This was opposite from how the preceding empire of the Assyrians ruled. Cyrus was a successful military commander, but he also recognized the need to leave the regions that he conquered in good economic order if they were going to provide him with tribute revenues. To achieve this, Cyrus left local rulers in place after conquering a region, and he allowed the local population to continue practicing their preferred religious traditions. These policies ensured that conquered regions continued to function economically and reduced the chance that they would rebel against him. In ancient Mesopotamia, a common imperial strategy was to relocate conquered populations to new areas in order to break up their political and cultural unity and make them less dangerous to the ruling power. Cyrus reversed this practice by allowing the Jews, who had been relocated by the Babylonians, to return to Israel and establish a tributary state. Some historians consider this to be an example of Cyrus's belief in human rights and generosity. Other historians think this was to help ensure Jewish loyalty towards Persia. In 522 BCE, Darius I became king. During his rule, the Persian Empire grew to its greatest size and power. The empire was divided into 20 provinces. A governor, called a satrap, ruled each of the provinces. The governors enjoyed a great deal of freedom in ruling. However, military forces in each province kept the governors from becoming too strong. Persian kings also used spies to keep track of the governors' activities. The Persian Empire made Zoroastrianism the official religion in 600 BCE. Although each culture was allowed to keep their own religion, the Persians followed the teaching of the prophet Zoroaster. Zoroastrianism is the world's first monotheistic religion and began in 1500 BCE. It was the main religion of the three Persian empires for 1,000 years. Zoroastrians believe in one main god called Ahura Mazda. There was no slavery in the Persian Empire because of the influence of Zoroastrianism. Slavery had been very common under the Egyptian, Median, and Babylonian empires. The Persians built a series of roads to increase communication and business activity throughout the empire. The most famous road was the Royal Road. The Royal Road stretched more than 1,600 miles west from the Persian capital of Susa. Mounted couriers of the Angarium passed relayed messages by using 111 stations along the road that maintained a supply of fresh horses. This system allowed a message to travel 1,677 miles from Susa to Sardis in 9 days. The journey took 90 days on foot. The Greek historian Herodotus wrote, "There is nothing in the world that travels faster than these Persian couriers." In about 500 BCE, the Persian Empire slowly began to weaken. It suffered military defeats and rebellion. In the 300s BCE, a kingdom known as Macedonia had come to power in Greece. By 330 BCE, the Macedonian ruler Alexander the Great had conquered the Persians. Persians, known as the Parthians and the Sassanians, ruled Persia from about 247 BCE until the 600s CE. At that time, Muslim Arabs invaded. The Persians became Muslims but kept their own language, which is called Farsi or Persian. A ruling family from Persia called the Safavids regained control in the early 1500s. They called their country Iran.